All right, so the most common type of skin disease is infection. Okay, here we go. Infection. So infections of the skin is what we see most frequently. But what we're going to talk about right now are skin cancers and, and then eventually burns, but these are the more damaging. So what about skin cancer? Most of it is benign. So most of the time we can treat it and have a healthy prognosis. They do not metastasize, meaning they do not travel into the bloodstream and then into other parts of the body, the ones that are benign. So a big risk factor is UV radiation, right? So if you're out in the sun because you are a farmer or a sailor, you would be exposed to more UV radiation than someone who works indoors at a desk. Fair skin also matters because melanocytes are a protective barrier from UV radiation. So the three major names are the basal cell carcinoma, the squamous cell, and then the melanomas. So let's look at this. So these ones are non-pigmented and they're associated with a deep epidermal layer. So basal cell, right? The deepest part of the epidermis was that basal layer, and then the most superficial was the squamous. But we'll talk about both, and you'll see the connection that they have here. So these are the number one types of skin cancer. Again, fair-skinned and then age, so over the age of 40, right? And we go back to UV damaging the DNA, right? And then that affects how the skin cells live their lives, how they're birthed, how they die, or whether or not they die. All right, so they mostly appear on the neck, face, and scalp. They're dry, scaly lesions usually, and they might extend into the dermis with an open ulcer. I should say basal cell. But their growth is slow and superficial. Again, the least bad, right? The malignant least bad, and the most common. They aren't likely to invade beyond the basement membrane. So this is also why they are not going to metastasize. So the cells do proliferate or increase in number, and then slowly invade the dermis and sometimes the hypodermis. But again, it's not likely to go beyond that. And they can easily be cured or treated by cutting out the problem area. So let's look at a few of these. These are small ones, right? And you can imagine surgical excision would take that away. This is a basal cell carcinoma, but it did extend into the dermal layer and then resulted in ulceration. What about the squamous? So it's the second most common type. It can metastasize, and it's involving the keratinocytes. Yeah, we usually see it here on the scalp, ears, lips, hands, but again, good prognosis. So high cure rate with surgical excision or radiation, unlike melanomas. So these are the highly metastatic, malignant, dangerous ones. They're rarer, but they can be treated again by cutting it out, but you have to cut out a larger space so that you can be sure to get all the cells, which would be spreading into the body. UV radiation, again, is the major cause of this. This cancer comes from the melanocytes. It is about 3% of all cancer cases, but anybody can get it at any age. Those who are more likely are those who burn in the sun and have a history of blistering burns. So if you have a second-degree burn from the sun, this would increase your risk, especially if you're doing that every summer or every other summer kind of a thing. And then closer to the equator, you have a higher intensity of sun or UV light. All right, so how do we avoid this? Well, we go to our primary care physician and they look at spots on your body and they look for irregularity, border irregularity, and asymmetry. Those are, it's somewhat different. So an irregular border is that this border isn't quite round. And then asymmetry would be if it was more bulbous on one end and then narrower on the other, for example. Color, so the more colors, the more likely it's something that's problematic, and then the larger it is. So we can just use a pencil eraser to determine if this is a large diameter, so anything over 6 millimeters. So here's a good example of asymmetry and irregular borders. So they, again, those kind of go hand in hand. You'll just have to excuse all this. All right, appearance. Trunk, back, and limbs is common. We said it's uneven. It can be raised. You can see that here. Can be around a skin or a mole. That's why the primary care physicians often check moles and note changes. So you personally would have a better sense of changes, or someone in your household or family who sees you regularly might be able to determine that even better than a PCP. Okay, so these ones grow horizontally, but then they go deep. We said they have a poor prognosis, and it's the primary cause of death by skin cancer. Here's a nice slide. Nice. I mean, it's what I like about it is that it's comparing different ones. So we have a squamous cell carcinoma, a basal cell, a malignant melanoma, and then a Kaposi, which is associated with the HIV/AIDS virus. Okay. I want to just say in general, to avoid this, we want to minimize our exposure to the sun or protective clothing and take good care of our skin health.